Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Alpha Platform. I have some very important economic and financial news to share with you all today. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. We're growing very quickly, and thank you guys for the love and support. Um, in the afternoons, I like to bring my personal, more soft content, but I think we still need to pay attention to the economy because the economy affects everyone, and you need to pay attention. Um, this is from Yahoo Finance. It says the U.S. economy is headed for a hard landing, and Fed rate cuts won't be enough to rescue it, Citi says. And this is coming from the Citibank's chief economist. So if the Citibank's chief economist is saying this, this lets me believe that this is going to happen. There's a huge chance this will happen, and I want you guys to get prepared. Meaning, pay down your credit card debt, stop using the credit card. Put money in savings, get rid of those car payments. Make sure your job is secure. If it's not, get those resumes ready. Start thinking about how you can bring income into yourself. I'm seeing more and more people, truckers especially, that are essentially doing other gig work like Instacart and Uber to make things meet because they don't have any work. Truckers, people that ship things around the company don't have work. So it's getting crazy. Let's go on. This is by Jason Ma. Last year's consensus was that the US economy was headed for a recession, but that didn't happen. This year's consensus is that we'll have a soft landing in which the economy slows but won't tip into a recession. That could be wrong too. Doubling down on his contrarian view, City Chief U.S. economist Andrew Hollenhurst told Bloomberg TV on Thursday that he sees a hard landing. In fact, inflation and the labor market will weaken enough that the Federal Reserve will cut benchmark rates 4 times this year, far more than one or two cuts Wall Street expects. So, if unemployment goes up, people are complaining about not being able to find jobs. We're getting jobs reports, but that are trying to tell us that hey, there are jobs out here, but we're finding out these jobs are like low paid part time gigs. So, if you can't find a full time job that's going to pay you a living wage, what are people going to do? His warning proved prescient as the Labor Department's payroll report for the following day showed that the economy added 175,000 jobs in April, down sharply from the blockbuster increase of 315,000 in March and well below the 233,000 gain that economists had predicted. Wow, that's a huge slash. On Thursday, Holdenhurst said other data have been signaling weakness in the labor market, including surveys of consumers and businesses that say jobs are getting harder to find. I told you, companies are less eager to hire, yup, and employees are feeling more worried about their jobs, including myself. To be sure, data in recent weeks have offered mixed signals on the economy. The latest employment cost index rose more than expected, suggesting a strong job market. Meanwhile, the first quarter GDP report showed growth cooled more sharply than anticipated, but that was due largely to a wider trade deficit and slower inventory restocking, while consumer demand remained robust. How is consumer demand so high? And the only way I can think that is possible is if people are still using their credit cards. And I know they are because, credit card debt has ballooned in this company to the trillions. It's to the trillions. And I think people need to wake up. They need to wake up and stop using that credit card. Stop it. But Hollenhurst is convinced there won't be a soft landing, and he said financial markets are starting to move away from that hope as well. Quote, the reason I think the Fed's going to see enough to cut is because we're moving more toward the hard landing end of the spectrum, he told Bloomberg TV. I think we need that hard landing. Like, we need the market to correct itself in order, and it's going to be painful for myself too. A lot of people will lose their jobs. A lot of people lose their homes, their cars. I don't want to see people being hurt like that. Um, but to get better, sometimes you need to go through pain. Like, what is the alternative? If we save this market, we're going to put more money into our economy, which will increase inflation, make things worse for us in the long run. Meanwhile, the Fed won't wait for both inflation and the labor market to weaken both before cutting rates, he noted. It needs to see only one or the other. When asked if his view for 4 rate cuts this year also means that they wouldn't provide enough economic stimulus to stave off a hard landing, Hollenhorst said almost every monetary policy cycle has played out that way. We're in the higher for longer stage of the policy cycle, he explained. noting that stubborn inflation has prevented rates from coming down. The next stage of the policy cycle is weakening of the labor market. Yep, unemployment going up. Once it starts gradually weakening, it then weakens more sharply. I think that's exactly what's playing out now. So before I get into the comments, if you're worried about losing your job, search your local state's WARN Act, WARN, WARN Act, and employers who have, I think, more than 90 employees, they have to give the local government or the state notice of a potential layoff because these people are going to be looking for government benefits. So the government needs a heads up. So look at your local WARN Act and see if your company's on the list, and it will tell you the company and the amount of people that are expected to be laid off in the next 90 days. So pay attention. Let's look at some comments. Sorry, it's taking a minute. Sue says Bank of America suddenly reduced one of my credit card limits and said it's part of their broader plan to protect themselves, essentially. Which is strange because I used it and always paid it off full and have been a Bank of America customer for over 18 years now. This is when it's going to get real. When these banks start shutting off credit cards and start limiting credit card limits, it's going to get real. One of my cards did the same thing to me a year ago. I never asked for the limit they gave me, and I'm fine with the new one as I will never get near it. Yep, never get near it. I have Chase and other credit limits. I always pay off my debt and have over 800 scores on all three. None of my credit lines have lowered my limits, and in fact, they've been trying to increase my credit. It must be you or Bank of America. I only use their banking, not their credit cards. Me too. I don't use their credit cards. Um, Last comment. Rates need to go up, not down. Inflation is still out of control, and these rates are still low compared to historical rates. I guess most people don't remember when mortgage rates were 15%. I think that was like in the 80s or 90s or something like that when it was 15%. I do agree with this guy. I think rates needs to go up. Rates need to go up. Unfortunately, that's going to mean higher unemployment. But it's the only way to fix this inflation crisis and get the housing market and so many other markets under control. Um, Last comment by Bill Henry. People think interest rates of 7.5% are high. Historically, they are not. I bought my first house in 1978. Interest rate was 10.58%. I bought my second house in 1988. The rate was 9.5%. I later refinanced it at 8%. I have always had good credit rating, 70/50 plus. Rates went crazy low in the 90s, and I refinanced at 6.5%. Then in 2006, I bought a second house, paying zero down and paid 3.75%. This is when, the 2008, just before 2008 crisis happened. You see, paying zero down and low interest rates, 2020 messed us up big time. Their policy of making 0% interest rates, it just disaster. Over the last 3 years, interest rates have averaged 7.73%, which is not too bad considering the history. But that economic policy during the pandemic was a nightmare, and that was under the Trump administration, slashing interest rates to 0%, for consumers to buy homes. It's insane, and we saw the purchase prices like skyrocket astronomically. All right, you guys, let me know what you think about this comment or this article in the comments below. Do you feel like the Citibank's chief economist is correct in his prediction of a hard landing? I personally feel like he is correct. I feel like the Fed needs to keep raising interest rates, and it's going to be hard because it's an election cycle, and no one wants to be to blame for this hard landing that's going to come. Um, I'm predicting after the election cycle, it's going to get real. That's all I'm going to say. All right, let's move on to the next article. Another article by Yahoo Finance. It says the U.S. will see a recession by year end that could spark a 30% drop in the stock market. Legendary forecaster Jerry Schilling says. And I covered this yesterday where Grant Cardone said there's going to be a 50% drop. I talked about Grant Cardone being a shock jock. I talked about him being highly leveraged in debt, using debt as a mechanism to build millions of dollars, which that's his motive and his program with it, and that's his stake on the economy. But Gary Schilling is someone that I trust more than Grant Cardone because Gary Schilling is actually he actually pays attention to the stock market. Grant Cardone is a real estate guy. Let's get into it. Investors should be prepared for a recession within the potential to send the stock market plummeting this year, Gary Schilling, a top forecaster, says. In an interview with Business Insider, the Wall Street vet, who was among the investors in the mid 2000s to call the subprime mortgage bubble, said he saw a recession coming by the end of the year as the market continued to weaken. That could be the final blow to the stock market rally, fueled by investor overconfidence, causing stocks to drop as much as 30%, Schilling said. And I've told you guys my strategy. I've seen this as well. I've seen, like, for example, lithium stocks. They're way too high for EV cars not to be selling. Like, the comparison of the stock price versus the selling rate of these EV cars does not match to me. So I've stopped putting money into all of my stocks, my entire portfolio. And all I'm doing is essentially putting money into my E-Trade account and letting it sit there. Every check, a little bit of money, letting it sit there, waiting for this crash to happen so I can, pounce when the time is right. Schilling pointed to the recent run up in risky assets such as stocks and cryptocurrency. I will never invest in cryptocurrency. That itself is a sign that the market is poised to drop. He said. Essentially, once a downturn gets underway. Quote, you look at all the kind of speculation that we've had out there, it's indicative of a lot of overconfidence, and that usually gets corrected and corrected violently, he said. Wow, a violent correction. The economy has already been flashing key signs of weakness as high interest rates take their toll. The labor market is weakening, with the unemployment rate sticking close to a 2-year high in March. Meanwhile, quit rates slumped to 2% in March, a sign that workers were waking up to difficult hiring conditions and less willing to leave their jobs than they were in the past. So less people are quitting their jobs. The job market, for one, is obviously slipping as firms pull back on hiring, Schilling said. Schilling believes companies have held onto more workers than needed because of the shortage of labor that slammed employers during the pandemic. Yes, he predicted layoffs would escalate later this year, with unemployment peaking at 5 to 7% as the economy weakened. Excuse me. A lot of companies did hire a lot of employers during the pandemic. We remember that the hiring spree. Um, yeah, they just hired too much. We saw that with the tech companies; they're already laying people off. Um, we're going to see it in every industry. We're just going to see it. Too many people were hired. They don't need all these people. We're going to see it. And now we have migrants coming into this country that are going to be competing for these jobs with you all. Like, it's just a matter of time before you have more and more competition for these jobs. Quote, employers wanted to hang on to their workforce and even add to it because they figured things were going to be tight forever, Schilling said. Well, they haven't been tight forever. The economy's growth has been slipping. He added, quote, employers are simply cutting back. Job losses could end up hitting Americans hard, especially since there are signs that many may be in worse shape financially than they were several years ago. People don't have any savings anymore. Like, if you're walking around here with no savings, bro, you're doing something wrong. You need to wake up. You need to do whatever you need to do to save money. Put some money away. San Francisco's Fed economists estimated that by March, consumers had probably blown through the last of their excess savings from the pandemic. Meanwhile, some recession indicators have for months been causing alarm over the economy. The 2 to 10-year Treasury yield curve, the bond market's most famous recession gauge, has been signaling a downturn since July 2022. The Conference Board's lead economic index, another gauge of economic strength, ticked lower in April, though the measure is not yet in recessionary territory. All right, let's read some comments. The Rock says one of these days he'll be right, but I don't know when that will be, so I'll just keep my portfolio the way it is and take my chances. All right, okay, then do it. Then do it. Take your chances. Keep rolling the dice. James says it's always good to adjust when things are uncertain. Go to needs instead of wants, like strong utilities with good dividends, consumer staples that are strong with dividends, investment grade bonds, some cash. So when there's a recession, you will have the ability to load up on big discounts. And if you are already retired, excuse me, then be careful of the black swan events that you will never recover from. Time will not be on your side. Interesting. Mike says, are these forecasters willing to beg their fortunes on making projections if they are if they are so certain? Excuse me. Are these forecasters willing to beg their fortunes on making projections if they are so certain? There should be some sort of down payments for issuing projections, so they will be more careful. Okay, that's like free speech, but you want them to pay for free speech? That's not going to happen. Last comment, Charles. Well, our government bails out big corporations all the time, but it doesn't result in anything for the people. But when they bail out the people, say taxing the highly profitable companies and individuals more and give it to the people, it puts more money in people's hands, keeps them afloat for a bit longer, but ultimately all that money trickles back up to the wealthy elite. It trickles up, not down. Reagan had it backwards. So I want to talk about that. Reagan's economic policy did a number on the American economy. It really changed the game in America. Um, it is the Republican strategy in terms of the economy, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So if we want to look at why the economy today is in shambles, you have to go back to the 80s. It's not just the president to blame or one person to blame. You really have to look at the decades of economic policy in this country. What do you guys think about the articles that I read today? Do you feel like a recession is coming? How are you planning to handle such an event? What about losing your job? Do you feel more committed to your job and you feel like looking for another job would be near impossible right now? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys for your love and support as always. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Take care and peace.